Welcome to the Robcast. This is a show about Oakville, the people that live, work, and do business here. Really excited about our guest today. This is Jonathan Sprawson. He's the founder and architectural designer of DQI, the Design Quorum of Oakville, an infamous design house. He's also very involved with this whole Midtown project that's currently a hot button issue in Oakville. You're not going to want to miss this.
It's the Robcast podcast. He's with you for the next hour or 20 minutes. Who knows? Let's see how it goes. Here he is. It's Rob Raham.
Jonathan, thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you very much for asking me. I really I'm pleased to be here. It's a great thing.
So, we've got a lot to talk about, a lot of controversy in Oakville right now with the Midtown project and other things. I want to get kind of started with, what was the path that kind of led you into the architectural design? Were you the kid that played with blocks, or what led you into this career you chose?
How long is this show?
Yeah, we've got about...
Well, what I'm told is that when I was 7, I asked my dad, who's the guy that makes the houses, that designs them?
7.
7 years old.
Okay.
So, yeah, big on Lego, big on blocks, big on drawing. I'm dyslexic, so I have a level of dyslexia, so everything was 3D and where I am in a room, like I can fly around a room.
Interesting.
So it's always been there.
It's funny, you walked into this studio and you say, what is this, about 24, 25 feet? Like, yes, exactly that.
It's my curse and my gift, I guess.
Yeah. So, tell me about your schooling leading into kind of how did you get to the point of starting DQI?
Great questions. Nobody ever asked me these things. I always wanted to be the designer. Didn't know it was called an architect until my dad and mom told me what it was. And I got into University of Waterloo, fantastic program for architecture. We traveled the world. We lived in Italy. We went to the States, Chicago, and wherever we wanted to see beautiful architecture. And beautiful is the wrong word, but great architecture.
Okay,
things
great.
that last. Yeah. And I had no idea what was involved in architecture until I got to school. And it was a rough road. I was used to getting 90s and 100% in high school.
Right.
And I get there and I'm getting 50 and
really?
60% on things. And they're telling me that, I don't know my ass from my elbow, sort of thing. And it was great. It was a great learning process. And
what changed in your studies, or was it a concept that you had to kind of open your mind to?
I think I was more, Lego and bricks and blocks. And they showed me how politics and religion and society forms architecture.
Interesting.
And that making the form is definitely a big part of it, but what goes into making that form, and it's about people and how they feel and what makes them tick. And so very important.
Over 35, 37 years now in Oakville, can you ballpark the amount of projects that you've done in this town?
I sometimes pull out a map and I have little dots and I say, I haven't been on that street yet.
Yeah.
I should be on that street. But my designs too aren't big homes, and architecture is usually conceived as something that is for big jobs, big budgets and stuff like that. But I have as much fun or more doing small, like a basement or whatever, right, because it's all about bringing those concepts to people. And one thing I learned at Waterloo was that you can change people's lives with good design.
It's interesting. In Southeast Oakville specifically, there's like a lot of character houses. And unfortunately, a lot of them have been smashed to the ground and up with the boxes. But from what I can see, and you always see that little orange DQI sign on the fences, you kind of take these kind of character houses and find a new twist, making them maybe more efficient, more livable, or more modern. Would you agree with that kind of statement?
Well, thank you for noticing that, because that's what we try and do. Like a lot of it is to do with being efficient with budgets. A lot of it's to be being good to the planet, like not throwing away good things and into landfill. But a lot of it is keeping the story going, for that community. And if you wipe it out and start again each time, you don't get a lot of growth. A tree that you cut off at the roots each time and then plants a new tree, you never get a big tree. So the idea of keeping that history going is a big one for us.
Yeah.
And also, like, And you brought up another term, sort of modernizing. It's bringing it to what we today see as being good design. So when they built those houses in Southeast Oakville for the Ford workers, for $20,000 or $25,000, my neighbor paid for her house. It was crazy. But those houses now are the $4 or $5, $6, $7 million places on the same size lots and stuff. Right. So things have changed, and what we see as priorities have changed. And I see myself as an agent for change, but not necessarily losing the past, but bringing the past forward and bring it into the future.
I think like most people could kind of understand this better when you look at certain neighborhoods, the 60s, 70s, West Oakville, Falgarwood, these areas, 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom on the main, right? And so 1 closet in each bedroom, 8x7, 10x8 rooms.
Yeah.
And those were on those huge lots in that area. I think it sounds like, so now kind of the expectation, what people want are walk-in closets, ensuite bathrooms, larger eating kitchen areas, things like that, right?
Yeah. One thing that's really changed is, I don't know, when you were a kid, you're much younger than me, but we used to be told, you get home from school, you're outside till dinner.
Yep.
The house wasn't that important. You were outside all the time. Now we're told you're outside too much. It's not good. Safety of your neighborhood, all that stuff. So there's got to be rooms. People think there has to be rooms inside for doing all these different things. So you have your theater room, you have your rec room, you have your living room, your dining room, your
office
family
space,
room, office
right?
space.
Yeah.
So things get bigger. Now my exploration is more, how can we make that tighter, smaller, and keep people more together? So when we were outside, we were playing with the neighborhood kids. When you're inside, if you're all in your different rooms and you're communicating on your phone to each other, you lose a lot of connection. So, and in a town, you can do the same. When you're so far apart, and you go to, like one of the things when we moved to Oakville with the kids, there were 5 families right around us, all went to different schools.
Right.
It was crazy. We're on the same street, but they're all at different schools.
Yeah.
Like private schools, public school, Catholic school.
But they still played as the neighborhood kids, right? Played
together.
sports together and everything together.
And it just gets more of that. So bringing community. So you start with the home, you bring the community of the home together, and in a neighborhood, you bring the neighborhood together by linking them with architecture, planning, spaces, all of those things.
But you're saying the house kind of builds the community with the neighborhood and the town, and I think that kind of segues into your involvement here with the Oakville Midtown project and plan.
OMG. Yeah.
OMG. And is that the name of the group you started?
It was kind of a joke in one of our design meetings. We were saying, like, this thing is huge.
So when the official plan came out, the first reaction was, oh my God.
Yeah, there's still no official plan. It's supposed to be an official plan amendment, an OPA, and it came to my front door. A piece of paper came and said, "Are you aware of Midtown and what is proposed?" And
where did that piece of paper come from?
That came from the
the Lakeshore
Trafalgar Chartwell Residents Association. Okay. And that's a group that I wanted to do. As soon as I saw that, I said, these people are doing great things. They want to... It was really interesting because it wasn't a NIMBY thing. It didn't say, stop Midtown.
Are you just aware? How do you feel about it? What are your thoughts?
And it said, yes, these are good ideas. The province came out with some great ideas for Midtown. It's an area that's not utilized very well.
Yeah. So, let me just stop you there. A lot of people out there watching, they're not even aware of what Midtown, and they might think it might be more north. Midtown is around the Oakville GO train. Essentially, it's from the 16 Mile Creek to Chartwell, south of the QEW, and north of Chartwell, which is
Cornwall. Yeah,
sorry, north of Cornwall. Yeah, sorry, and that is 1 square kilometer.
Exactly, 1 square kilometer.
Right, and there's a ton of industrial businesses and things in there right now, and it's all slated to...
Well, there's a lot of empty space, too. The old GE plant is there.
Right,
it's been empty for years and years. And there's, big box stores, like Home Depot is in there, which is very successful in there. There's a grocery store in there. But for, 100 square hectares or, over 200 acres, it is not well utilized. And one of the problems with the way we plan our communities is we plan them around cars. So we have huge infrastructure, lots of roads, lots of space, so that we can use our cars to get to them. by planning around a train station, you're planning around transit, which is great. You're building a community right in the center of another community, which means that you've got all the use of the other community, but you're creating what's called a whole community there. In 103 hectares, you can create a whole community. It's a great idea.
I mean, whatever the initial plan or whatever that we were calling that was kind of shocking in some of its. It didn't seem like there was a lot of kind of or common sense in behind, like the density of populations, the no restrictions on height. I mean, we're talking 50-story buildings. Like the idea, and I think your son Ben put it like a future Manhattan kind of skyline. Like drive down the Gardner and get off at Spadina, and that's what at least the proposal, initial one, could have been.
It was a shock. It was a complete shock because number one, like there is a place for towers. And there's lots of them, and they're proliferating everywhere, like they're going all over the world. But is it the right thing for downtown Oakville? Because like you're right, Midtown. Everybody thought Midtown was close to the middle of Oakville. Yeah. But it's really right at the train station, so it's quite a bit south. It does have lots of room, relatively lots of room, but how many people? So if you look at a hectare, and a hectare is, we use the example of George's Park, which is just south of the site. Yep. It is exactly 1 hectare if you measure it from curb to curb. Is exactly
Reynolds, Trafalgar.
Yeah.
Georgia Square Park, right?
Yeah. And it's like I'm more imperial, so it's 300 feet or 330 by 330 feet about that. So in South Oakville terms, or even North Oakville terms, it represents about 6 houses,
6 dwellings.
Let's say 15 at the most. Those are really narrow lots. Right. But 6 if you go with wider lots. And you say, okay, so on that, maybe that isn't enough density. Maybe 12 to 20 people living there, maybe 35 people, isn't enough to create community. So what is the right amount? Well, the province came in with a number of 200 people. So that's residents and jobs per hectare. Okay. As a minimum. So my first thing was, what does that mean? Where is that in the world? Yeah. Well, Manhattan Island is about 350 to 400 people per hectare. There's parts that are higher, but if you take the whole island, including Central Park, that's what it is. Okay. And its highest density is actually in the jobs. So we're including jobs and people. So that's what that is. What is Hong Kong? It's like 600 people per hectare. It's quite high. Singapore is very high, in around that neighborhood. Well, some of the proposals that have come in are 3,500 people per hectare. So when you look at Oakville, say it was 35 people per hectare, and now we're 3,500.
How's that? Is it even possible?
100 times more dense than anywhere in Oakville.
Than Hong Kong and Manhattan.
And it's more dense than those areas. Yeah. Now, if they would say, well, there are areas of Singapore and Hong Kong and Manhattan that are that high. Yeah. But then you look at the whole picture of it. Is it in 1 square kilometer that it's like that? Right. Like I took that square kilometer and placed it over Mississauga. Google is amazing. Yeah. Well, I'm terrible at it, but my son and the students that I work with, and they take it and they put it over there and they go, how many buildings are in there? And what does this proposal mean? So if they accepted that proposal for 3,500 people, and that's another interesting thing. It might be boring for most people, but the numbers that they give for figuring these things out. So when you're building a building, how many people are in that? How do you work out how many people per square foot? Okay. Sort of thing. So the town came up with a number which is different from Mississauga and Burlington and Toronto. Their number was 1.7 people per unit. Okay. So, and they got it from a report that covered Oakville, and that's about what it might be in Oakville. But Oakville isn't that dense, so you have to look at other areas. So in Toronto, it's 2.2 people per unit. Okay. That's the average. In Mississauga, it's about the same. Burlington, it's about the same. So why are we 1.7? And what does that mean? So if you took a building that was, 1,700 units, and you multiply by 1.7, you get a number. If you multiply by 2.2, you get a very different number because it's 30% more. And you go, so which number should we use when we're looking at the future? And what is the right number to use? Because we don't want to just pick a number. So there's huge debate over that. Like, how do you say how much building will give us this many people?
I just want to pull it back again. So you get this piece of paper at your door. Now, this is one of the challenges we've had a lot of guests on that we find one of the challenges in Oakville is you have no community news. So there's no community announcements. And that, in my opinion, makes it, especially for the town, doesn't really hold them accountable. Because the majority of people in this town don't even know that this is happening.
Right.
And there's no, where are they advertising the meetings for this?
Right.
Right. So you get this, like, why did you feel the need that you needed to kind of look into this and, and get into this and be an advocate, kind of not necessarily standing up to it, but just getting some, some more clarity on what the plan is and what's best for Oakville?
Well, when I read it, I wanted to make sure that what I was reading was true. Is this what is being proposed there? And they proposed that there could be, 60-story buildings in your backyard. And I'm going, is that true? Where did that come from? Because I knew that the limit was 20 story buildings in that area, and the density was much less, and it was not moving anywhere because that was done in 2014. They set this new official plan for Midtown. So where's this coming from? And so I dug into all the province of Ontario information. I dug into everything that they're doing in California because they're doing the same things. They're trying to get the same things going in California. I looked all over the world at different solutions and what they were proposing and why they were proposing it. And one of the things that kept popping up was housing shortage. We need housing. Oakville has to grow, double in population in the next 30 years, they're talking about, which is huge growth. I call that cancer, but they're calling it, huge growth to double the population in that period. So I said, and what is the right population? I grew up in the suburbs of Mississauga and Oakville. Like, what do I know about density and living in dense populations? I lived in Italy for a while, in Rome, and it was fabulous. And the density there is 400 people per hectare. It's wonderful density. Where I grew up, there was 16 people per hectare. So it's very different. So I wanted to inform myself. My son Ben and Matthew Steves, we said, let's look at this. This is a great opportunity. Let's look at this, what it is. So was it a moneymaker? No. In fact, I hired the student, Matthew, because he's very bright, an excellent employee, but I wanted him to devote his ability to manipulate the computer and the tools of the day to bring this information to people. And he was a first-year University of Waterloo student, and so he didn't know any of this stuff, so I thought, he's a great guy because he will see it with fresh eyes. Right. My son, he's an architectural technologist and a very bright guy, I said, let's use them. So we spent probably, Matthew was there for 4 months. That's all he worked on, was getting information from Midtown. And it wasn't to propose what it could be, but we did do some proposals. It was to find out, what are they saying? What is this? Where does this come from? So we had questions about, they're saying that 40 hectares of the 100 are developable. So that means 60% of the site is not. It's roads and train tracks and stuff.
Parking, GO train.
We came up that it was more like 70 hectares were developable because they weren't including any of the land owned by the province. They weren't including any of the land that they were using to widen the roads. Yet when they widen the roads, they give that piece back to the developer. They can use that in calculating what they can do. So we thought, that doesn't sound right. We should dig into that. This number for people per unit, where did that come from and why are they using that? How many people Oakville wants to see there, which was 65,000 people.
In the 1 square kilometer.
In the 1 square kilometer, 65,000. Nowhere else in Oakville, nowhere else in, probably the GTA has that density. Why that? Where did it come from? So they had their sources, and so we just looked into that, and we wanted to present that to the people. And one of the things that we looked at was, what if it wasn't designed around towers and cars? What if it was designed around community and using local builders, local designers, local suppliers to make buildings that were in the missing middle, that thing where it's not a house, but it's also not a tower. It's all of those in there. So it's, two duplexes, threeplexes, sixplexes, 6-story buildings. We limited ourselves to 10 stories, and we got easily 35 to 40,000 people there on the
same space.
On the same space, and without any towers. So we said, why are they looking at towers? And I'm not saying towers aren't a solution, but they aren't a great solution going forward. They use a lot of concrete, steel, and glass, which is very hard on the environment. Mm-hmm. It's very hard to create community in a tower. Whereas small buildings, there's many. So I was studying many planners too that are in vogue right now. They've been for a long time, mostly from Europe, but all over the world. And one of them, Jan Gilles, said that over 5 stories and you lose contact with the street. Because as a human, you look up and you can only see up 5 stories. You can only hear that distance. And above that, he said, you might as well be in an airplane flying over.
Interesting.
And it's interesting the way they present the proposals for towers. They're usually flying around it in an airplane. You're never on the road looking up.
Yeah, exactly.
You're flying around.
Drones looking at it. Yeah.
Limo in a tuxedo going through the lobby. And that's not how people live.
Yeah.
And one of the other things that really troubled me is I said, where are the schools?
For 65,000 people.
For 65,000. So you think in South Oakville, I did a count.
Is New Central just going to pick that up in OT or what?
Yeah, exactly. Those schools are
500 portables out in the lawn.
Yeah. Or so they said, well, we're going to look at schools differently. They're going to be in the towers possibly.
Oh.
So where
you don't never leave the tower?
That's the thing. Like, you just think of drop off. You drop them off to an elevator to go up to the 6th floor so they can have their school. And I'm not saying that it's wrong, but even in Manhattan, one of the highest populated areas in North America, the schools have an address on the street.
Yep.
And Matthew actually lived in Manhattan or just outside Manhattan for a good part of his life. And he said the schools were presented on the road and people could drop off at the street. But if you're on the 6th floor above a podium and your outdoor space is on the 6th floor, if you want to play catch or football, you miss the ball, it goes on to Trafalgar Road and you break some windshields and crash some cars. So we go, oh, so where are the schools? And they said, we're providing 3 schools. And in 100 hectares in 1 square kilometer, that's a lot of schools. But with that population, it's 14 schools that are required based on Oakville standards. That's what we came to. So where do 14 schools go if you have that population? In North Oakville, they had a new plan for North Oakville, and they proposed for 60,000 people, 14 schools. So I said, why isn't that here? Yeah, so they said, well, one of the things is all the units are small. They're 1 bedroom. So then we said, is that complete community? How many families can live in 1 bedroom?
Yeah.
Or even a couple? It's very hard to live in 1 bedroom, especially if one person's living at home. So there were lots of questions that we had.
It sounds like you mean, I'm not sure if it was last fall or if it was January when you spoke, and I know you've spoken numerous times, but, I think you kind of had a vision of what it could be, like you were speaking of, nothing higher than 10 stories, and you got a standing ovation by everyone in attendance there.
It was amazing. Made my hair stand on end because I've been to a lot of town meetings.
I have too.
And that doesn't happen.
No.
And you don't get a crowded room, and they actually opened the atrium so people could sit in there. And
overflow,
they opened another room for overflow, and there were people online. And for people to take that time to come and then to see something that they could believe in and stand up and do an ovation, it floored me. And it gave me hope that something else could come out of this other than, I hate to say it, a plan for profit. And it's not just profit for the developers. It's very hard as a council and a mayor to say, we need money, we need people. Imagine the revenues from 1,700 units per hectare for the town. And it's good to have good revenues. You have to see it that way. But not at the loss of community and not at the loss of everybody around. So one of the other things is that it is more South Oakville. And how do you get the involvement of North Oakville? what does it mean to them to have this area?
Yeah. It's funny, we haven't even mentioned North Oakville in this whole conversation, really. And, what is that impact on us? And how will that impact us traffic? How is it going to be? I live in North Oakville. I want to drive down to the GO train in the morning. How is that going to look?
Great questions. Like North Oakville.
It already is a challenge. Sorry to interrupt. It's crazy. Trafalgar's great. You cannot be south of the QEW on Trafalgar between 4 and 7 o'clock.
Oh, yeah.
If you're going north.
If you ride a bike, which I love to ride a bike, I have a fantastic job. I work with fantastic people, and I have the best thing is my clients and the people I work with, and I could ride my bike to most of my sites. Like, how many people can say that? It's a fantastic thing. But I never ride my bike to the town hall. And it's because you cannot get over Trafalgar Bridge without taking your life into your hands at least 4 times.
On the on and off ramps.
On all the on and off ramps. There is no provision. There's a little finger in the middle of the highway where there was supposed to be a pedestrian bridge 15 years ago that they fought for, put that finger because the bridge was rebuilt but wasn't designed for bicycles or people. It was just cars. And so that alone tells me, that I can't ride my bike there. I'm afraid, and I ride my bike all over the world. I love riding my bike, mostly in Canada, but I love riding my bike all over the world. And that is the most dangerous place I have ever ridden my bike. I'll never do it again.
Even people walking, I'm always like, oh, geez.
Yeah, when I see somebody standing there, I go, do you want to ride across the bridge?
Yeah,
because
they do the quick blind check as they cross over
Well, imagine adding another 50,000 cars or something like that. If there's 100,000 people, it's maybe an exaggeration, but that's a lot of people. These buildings go down 6 stories underground with parking. So imagine being parking down there, and you're trying to get up to the convenience store in the next mall or the next neighborhood. You're going round and round and round, and then you get up to Trafalgar Road, and you go. Yeah. Oh my God, 10 minutes. I bet it's more than 10 minutes to get out. So, but North Oakville, we are Oakville, north, south, east, and west. But how do you get the involvement if the south, which is really impacted because they can't get north? And from this site, one of the craziest things about this site, there's only one connection north and south. And Trafalgar going south of the site is 2 lanes. And it can never be wider because there's a river.
Yep.
And going west from the site is a river that you have to go around, and there's only one way. You have to go down under the bridge and up the other side. It's a really congested, constricted site. Even on Chartwell, there's no street that goes through Chartwell because on the other side of Chartwell is the train lines that won't be moving anytime soon. So how do you get cars going east, west, south, or north from this site?
Just bottlenecks right down to Trafalgar. And it already is a bottleneck.
It already is.
Yeah.
So how do you get 7 of the councillors are North Oakville? They're going to be voting on this. And one of the things I would say if I was a councillor is, great, put the density there so that I can have proper size schools, proper size parks, proper parking. Because right now, the way they design north of Dundas, and you can speak to the councillors up there, there's not enough parking. It would be great if we see the world as with fewer cars, but right now we have to address cars because they're real, and we have to have more transit, but it's going to be years ahead. So it's got to work now, and it doesn't the way they have it, and their density is nowhere near what they're proposing.
Right.
So we want to appeal to them to say, if this is like this, what's the next place where it's going to happen? It's going to be there. And you trying to get to the lake, or the lake trying to get up to North Oakville, or up to Cottage Country, or anywhere into Toronto, it's not going to happen. And they've never done a traffic study to show that.
How's that possible if they haven't done a traffic study on a proposal of...
Well, they say that the one they did was based in 2016, and old stats. And
were we 100,000 population then, or?
yeah. Well, it shows the province wants a certain size for Oakville, and Oakville's numbers were 100,000 more. So the province's projection was based on a line that they took data and say Oakville's growing like this, and here we are today. So if we continue that, which is possible, but not in the rest of the world. China, if they did that, theirs is going like this. Their population is dropping. Yep. Many places other than India, maybe Africa, I'm not sure, the population's dropping. North America, if we didn't have immigration, our population would drop. But we do have immigration, and we would like to house those people. So if we do it the same way we have, this is how the growth is. And that's what they were projecting. So the province had a great number. Oakville's number was 100,000 more, 25% more than was projected. And you go, how is that they could be off so much?
Yeah.
And then so they're saying, where are we going to house them? So they say, Midtown's a great place.
Yeah, in a 65-story building.
In a
with one bedroom.
Building, yeah. And you have great views to Toronto.
Yeah.
But you can't go anywhere. Sorry.
So you had this. I think there's a lot of other residential groups, Joshua Creek and Lakeshore, or these others that are on your side, or they've had you speak with them on your behalf, and are kind of asking the same questions you are. It sounds like it's had an impact. I mean, the latest meeting sounds like there were some positives, and kind of some twists along with it. That's kind of the update of the amendment of the plan.
I have to say that it was amazing to sit in the audience and listen to the residents' associations. They are some of the most brilliant people I've ever met. They captured things that I was just spellbound by, like the stuff they talked about, the professional quality presentations they did to the town. I was shocked at, and it really gave me strength to see that there's all these fantastic people working on it. They had people that talked about ecology, traffic, transportation, accounting, engineering things, like experts from all over. Nowhere else could you get that. And these people were passionate.
It was a long list of speakers in that one.
There were 30 people.
30 people.
And every meeting went beyond. And they all deserved a standing ovation for what they did. They're getting paid nothing.
Yep.
They are doing this free with their own time. And it was just amazing to see. And like everybody in Oakville should be so pleased that there are people that love their community enough. And I really think this is worth saying again, that it's not NIMBY. Nobody said we don't want it. Nobody said we don't want to share Oakville. We don't want to grow Oakville. They all said, let's grow it properly. And let's grow it with the right densities and create a community there that we're as happy with as we are with the rest of the communities in Oakville, and make the other communities better, like the ones that do have parking issues and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
So, I mean, I've been to a number of meetings over the years, and I remember the Glen Abbey golf course was a hot button one as well, and they were full. Yeah. But, tell me, for those of the people in Oakville who don't attend these meetings, what are they like?
It'd be wrong for me to say they're entertaining all the time, because a lot of it is quite dry and boring. But there are definite reasons to be there, and I think most people could find something interesting in the meetings. Now, that's generally for the meetings. Midtown meetings have been very different. I've never seen attendance like in the Midtown meetings. At one of the meetings in January this year, they had to have 2 overflow rooms. People who are presenting couldn't even make it into the main room.
Wow.
There were 700 people, I think, on the online at one, and I don't know what the highest mark was, but at the beginning of the meeting, it was huge input from the town, from the people of the town, and that's the meeting that we got a standing ovation from. But subsequent to that, the mayor made a rule that there's no clapping. There's no
since these meetings, since
he said there is no. Definitely, you shouldn't be heckling. Nobody should be saying no. We don't agree with you.
Sure.
But they can so. You could hear oohs and no. But for people to support something and show their support, I think that really helps.
So it's Mayor, he said no more clapping, no more support.
Yeah.
Or ovations.
Yeah, that's what he said in one of the meetings. So,
where does the mayor stand on all this?
That's a great question, and I've had many dealings with the mayor, and I have great respect for this man. He is an incredible politician. He's done great things for the town. I think that he's a great leader. He brings people together. But the bad side, the mayor, was in the first few meetings. One, he was there and he left. One
in the middle of the meeting,
right at the beginning.
Is it dinner time or something?
Yeah. No, he's usually in the center, but the one of the councillors, and I'll say here, the councillors in Ward 3 and Ward 2, all the councillors, but especially those councillors, have been amazing. They've taken a lot on their shoulders. You can imagine, these are billion-dollar projects that are being proposed. There is a lot of people and a lot of money involved in these things, and they're standing up against them. They're saying, let's build community, let's not build profit. Let's build community, let's not build our tax base.
Yep.
Community first. So, and the mayor, I think it was in the May meeting, did an about face. He became supportive. Like at first he was quiet, and a good politician wants to be seen, and he wasn't seen in these meetings. He either left or had nothing to say, and the people running the meeting for the committee of the whole that they set up to talk about this, which was an amazing idea, which was called the cows, which I didn't like that, but anyway, the committee of the whole, which was an amazing thing, he took a step back. Now that could be seen as, okay, let's see how this runs. And I think that's fantastic. But then in the May meeting, he came forward and made an announcement. We all had presentations to make about why we didn't like the rework that they did, because it was exactly the same. Said, well, instead of 30 meters apart, we're going to make them 35 meters apart. How's that? That's a big change, isn't it?
Yeah.
Instead of making them 58 stories, how about we limit them to 45 stories? And you go, but what about another idea? Didn't come through. Anyway, the mayor said, stop. We're going to take a vote on these 7 points that I think Councillors Giddings and Hassel-Theat put together, a list, and they were all agreed on. And they were things like limiting the population to, I think it was 35,000 people.
Is this the May 23rd?
This was, the May 23rd meeting. And I had a presentation. Wow. I go, well, I got nothing to say because you're coming.
So you kind of did like a 180 almost.
180 on it.
Yeah.
And so, you're sort of standing there and say, well, I could talk about this, but it's redundant now. So thank you very much. And I think, this shows that people can have input into the political sphere.
Yeah. And as they should.
This is our
This
country,
is what it is. It's
it?
democracy, right? Yeah. We elect these people.
It's great. Let's go. Then the next meeting, going,
dun dun dun.
What can happen here? We thought this is going to be fantastic. The province has come in and said, we are going to bring a transit-oriented community. All great words. Transit, oriented toward people, community, people, and stuff like that. But we're not going to ask you. Sorry, we're going to work on this with select groups, the developers, I would assume, select pieces of land, who knows which pieces of land, how much, could be the whole thing, and we're going to show you we're going to tell you more about it July 8th. Well, now it's after July 8th, and I went to the July 8th meeting, and you know what? They kicked me out of the meeting because it was in camera. And I go, this is democracy?
They kicked you out of the meeting?
Where's Putin? Nobody was allowed. In camera just means that they're going to do it. And they have their reasons, I'm sure. Like, they don't want to set land values. They don't want to talk about possibilities.
So no one was allowed in. It was just...
Nobody. It was just councillors.
So first we're not applauding. No ovations. No one's allowed in.
So... and it's the province. So IO, which I didn't know what IO was. IO is Infrastructure Ontario.
Okay.
They do these talk things, these transit-oriented communities. They've done them before. And they represent the developer's interest as well as, they say, the province's interest.
Yeah.
So now no one's allowed into the meeting.
Nobody.
I get kicked out. Only the councillors and the staff are in the meeting with the CAO. And I'm sitting outside waiting for it because they said, you'll be called back in at the end. An hour later, I left. It was about 10 o'clock, and I left. So now, it seems, the province through IO, which is Infrastructure Ontario, who happens to own 11 hectares of land that isn't scheduled for development in that area.
How coincidental.
That's very coincidental.
Yeah.
Nobody's talked about that yet, but I'm sure it'll come up because I keep bringing it up. But
If they let you talk.
Yeah, I'll talk to myself about it and call the newspaper. So what do we do from here? We're now out of the equation. They say maybe this fall, and they say they will. They're going to show us what they're planning, and we'll have input.
Maybe.
Just like when you come at the last minute and they say, "Oh, but this is all wrong." Oh, vote. Let's do a vote on this. Yeah.
So it almost sounds like lip service. Like the town just did, okay, let's hear them out, and then the big bad province comes in and says, "This is how it's going to be."
And I'm not sure because I wasn't in the meeting, because I wasn't allowed to be in the meeting. And what they presented after the half hour that they said this is what's going to happen was exactly what they said before. We don't know who's involved. We don't know how much land is involved. We don't know what they're trying to do, other than the fact that she did use the word affordable. I don't know what that means because it's all over the place. It's the first time it's been used. So maybe they're going to do something great. But we don't know because they're not going to tell us until the fall, when it's probably too late, because they have mandates to have certain populations in place at a certain time.
So where does this all mean for you? Like, where do you see this going, your role and involvement, and whether it's in Oakville or other towns and being an advocate for these things? Where do you see the future of this?
Daily, I revisit it. Luckily, my wife is very supportive. She's the one who, when the notice came, she said, "Who's going to fight this?" She said, "This is your job. You should fight this."
That's what she said to you.
Every time I say, "I'm losing faith in this stuff," it's it's like running into a brick wall. It's billions of dollars against my sketches, and it's not going to go anywhere. But then you see the mayor turn around, and then you see the councillors all supporting a lower, and you get invigorated. And then the province comes in and says, "Hammer it down,
You're out.
You're out. We're not doing this." And you wonder how much they, as individuals, understand the bigger picture. So I see my goal as bringing out what the bigger picture could be and what the options are. One of the interesting things about this site is very few people that are there now will be there after. There is no community to vote on it.
Kyle and I were talking about, we know people who've got the notice. You're out.
Yeah.
I've been here for 30 years. You're out.
You're out. But the people that are going to be living there aren't in Canada maybe even now. They're not residents. So we have to look after them as well. Like, what is their outcome? Who wants to live in Oakville? What is the great things about Oakville why would I be in a little one-bedroom cubicle in Oakville versus being in Toronto, where I've got theater and ballparks and the number of hectares of land per person for park in Toronto versus this site will be almost 10 times. Like, those are the types of things that you don't realize. You say, "Oh, there's a nice park." But yeah, that's a nice park for 1,000 people, but not 35,000 people.
Right.
And one of the parks they call a park is 2 baseball diamonds in a parking lot that nobody can use the baseball diamonds other than baseball players, which is
and they're
fine.
smaller fields too. They're not like they're smaller diamonds. They're not real.
So where's the park? Where's the place where I can sit with a blanket and enjoy the park? Well, that park has a little tiny playground associated with it, but for a 2-hectare park or whatever it is, it's 1 hectare, there's probably a couple thousand square feet that you can actually use as a park. So it's all these sort of deceptions that we see, OMG, that we want to clear these things up or ask, tell me what they are. I'm looking because you're not telling me. So if I'm wrong, please tell me and what is right, and tell the people. And then it comes back to your idea, like, how do you get that word out?
Yeah, exactly.
Flyers to the door is one thing, but how do you get the word out to the people who are future
without the community
purchasers?
News, right? Yeah.
How do you get out even to the developers to say, guys, this isn't a great investment for you because we're going to fight it to the end.
Yeah.
And we're going to make something that works. It'll be profitable too. It'll be very profitable. I build small projects and I make a profit on it. They don't have to be big. They can be usable, livable, functional, beautiful. Human scale, let's put that word in there. Human scale is a wonderful thing. And people associate with that. People want to be in downtown Oakville because it's got a human scale. And then we go build this.
Yeah. Doesn't really add up.
And then what happens to the mall on the north side? You know that you could probably put 10 towers in the parking lot of that mall if you do the same zoning there. Yeah. And then across the street from that. And where does it stop? Because it's so profitable. But is it livable? Like, that's the mayor's term. We want.
Isn't it called livable Oakville? Wasn't that the plan?
Yeah, and is that? And it's not to say apartments again are terrible, but there's a place for them,
Right.
And there's a percentage or that there should be, and there should be other options for people.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate everything you're doing here, Jonathan. You're segueing into the Robcast Rapid Ask here, where you have no idea what's coming. So you're on death row, in jail. You got one last meal. You're by yourself. What's on that plate?
Oh my God. If it was up to my wife,
No.
it would be. It's just mine.
It's just you.
I'm very big on. My grandkids will know this: pancakes and cookies. Like that's I can make great pancakes.
Okay.
French toast and chocolate chip cookies.
That's what you want on your plate.
And that's what I would have.
Pancakes and
Something I
comfort
make.
food.
This is it's comfort, but it's also something I can make. So
Yeah.
being creative, and I make them different every time. But that's what I would
Pancakes
have.
and cookies.
How many chocolate chips per hectare?
More than there should be, probably. Yeah.
And what's
than
the growth
healthy.
nodes on the
Yeah.
chocolate chips here, right?
And that's why my wife controls my diet more than I do.
If you could sit down with anyone for dinner, dead or alive, who would that person be?
Oh boy, that's a tough one. My father would be probably the first choice. Then my brother.
Okay.
Both dead, but I'd love to sit down with them to speak to somebody. It's an odd one, but I would like to have dinner with Trump, Mr.
Is that right?
President Trump, because everything he does just blows me away as being, how can he do that?
I know.
And how can he think that's right?
Yeah.
I'd love to pick his brain. It would be wonderful.
Let me ask you this one. What's something that most people don't know about you?
I make great French toast.
And cookies.
Yeah. What they don't know about me. One of my biggest pleasures is cutting the grass at my cottage on my tractor.
I hear you.
It's like, and then
You're in your happy place.
One of my best friends, and that's his biggest pleasure too, is cutting my grass at my car. No, it's just one of those things where your mind can just go. You're sort of out there with nature. You're cutting it down, but you're grooming it.
You're maintaining it.
I'm making a groomed part of the forest, sort of thing that we can all share, sort of thing. So that's. That would be it. Probably.
Well, Jonathan, I really appreciate you taking the time and all the work that you're doing with this Midtown thing in Oakville. We look to stay in touch with you. Hope we'll have you back for another episode. And I appreciate everyone out there watching. And stay tuned for another episode of the Robcast.
Thank you very much, Rob.
You're most welcome.
It was incredible. I really appreciate you taking concern in this stuff too.
Happy to have you. Yeah, no. Who's going to do it?
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Who's going to do it?
Who's going to do it?
I like it. Be a little loose. I like that.
Yeah.